Call the meeting of the Board of Trustees for Meridian Library District to order. We have one trustee joining us over the phone, and that's Trustee Kohler, Chair Kohler. The first item on the agenda is public comment, which is one of multiple ways to get in touch with the trustees. We have nobody signed up for public comment today, so we'll move to item number 3, which is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda include those that are just a matter of routine and don't require discussion. Can I get a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item number 4 on the agenda is financials, and I'll turn it over to Nick and/or Emma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have this month the approval of the May financials, and the information for those is in your packet. Happy to answer any questions that you may have on anything related to those financials.
Thank you, Nick. Questions?
Madam Chair.
Trustee Cummings.
Nick, I just had a question about the window cleaning for Orchard. I noticed that, and I hadn't seen that before for $2,500. Is that a monthly or quarterly, or could you kind of go into some details on that?
Yes, thank you, Trustee Cummings. Yes, that is new, especially with, we've had it done before. It hadn't been a scheduled piece that we had done routinely. With this new company, we will have the windows at all of our locations washed quarterly, and essentially the contract for that has come in less than what it was to do just Orchard Park. So to do all of the facilities, it's now less than the company that we used previously, and so we'll be able to clean those. We have a company that comes in and does it because, especially with this building here at Orchard Park, it's high, it takes specialized equipment, and so it's something we'll do quarterly, especially on the higher up, on the inside windows. I think we have those done at height level with our janitorial service, but for the specialized window cleaning, we have this new company. So yes, that is new, but it will be something that you'll see routinely going forward.
So it's $2,500 a quarter, $10,000 a year to cover all the buildings, you said, for the?
Not for all of the buildings, but we have a good price for all of the buildings. So that will be $2,500 for this location per quarter.
Okay, is that exterior only?
No, that is interior as well.
Seems reasonable. The only downside I saw was that the company looks like it's based out of Boise, not Meridian. That's the only thing that made me sad.
You know, I appreciate that, but I'll take the low cost whenever we can. So.
Any other questions regarding the financial reports or disbursements? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the May 2026 financial reports as presented and published.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the May 26 financial reports. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. And a motion on the disbursement approvals.
Madam Chair,
Trustee Castle.
I move to approve the disbursements for May 2026.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, item number 5 on the agenda is a presentation from folks who attended the Public Library Association conference.
Come and discuss our attendance at the PLA conference. My name is Jane Olson. I'm the branch manager at the Unbound branch.
Hi, I am Barbara Hendricks with the Orchard Park branch, an adult services librarian here.
And I'm Trevor Hansen, the adult services librarian at Pinnacle.
All right, before delving in to the conference, I'd like to give you a little tour of the town. So on the screen, you can see a picture of Prince, and he was born in Minneapolis and resided throughout the area through his whole life and his career. There's the Target Corporation, which was founded in 1902. Bob Dylan, then Bob Zimmerman, enrolled in the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis in 1959, attending 1 year and dropping out. Fun facts, he rarely attended classes. And at this time period was when he began using the name Bob Dylan. There is Mary Tyler Moore on the other side, the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which spanned from 1970 to 1977, was set in Minneapolis. Vikings have called Minneapolis home for 40 years, and the Minnesota Twins have been based in Minneapolis, Twin City area for 65 years. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, back one. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Attending a conference in Minneapolis in the first week of April can be unpredictable, and with the weather. So presenting the Skyways. The first one was built in 1962 to help pedestrians avoid the cold, harsh weather. These climate-controlled walkways now span over 9 miles, 80 blocks that it connects. And then you can see in the middle of the screen the navigation system. And so the signage on the top left, at the top of it, the signage works really well in the navigation system. So very well put together.
Next slide, please. So when we were not in sessions, we took some time kind of touring around the city. The three of us got to look at a lot of the cool architecture in downtown Minneapolis. It was my first time in Minneapolis, and it was really an interesting experience. There's some beautiful old churches. We visited the Fauché Tower, which is the tallest tower in Minneapolis. It had been the tallest building in the United States for quite a long time, built in the 20s, and there's a lot of kind of intrigue and scandal in that story, and it also provides really great 360-degree views of the whole city. So we definitely had a fun time checking out the architecture in Minneapolis.
This is the Minneapolis Central Library. I didn't have time to go to that, but we have some facts about it. It's connected right into the Skyway, so regardless of the weather, people can access it. It's 5 stories tall, and it has 353,000 square feet of space. Has a soundproof piano room, has 300 public computers, 200 plus seat auditorium, and contains 2.4 million items for patrons to check out.
So a little bit about the PLA conference. PLA stands for Public Library Association, and this conference that happens every 2 years is billed as the largest public library event in the world, serving about 6,000 attendees and containing more than 100 educational sessions. And we were there in Minneapolis April 1st through 3rd. Next slide. So as you can see in my picture, even though we had unseasonably warm weather in March and April, Minneapolis was probably a month behind, and we got snow while we were there, and there was snow over at the Minnehaha Falls, which is where I'm photographed there with my husband. The focus of the sessions that I attended a lot of leadership and management sessions. I looked into library services, including reentry services and Library of Things, and sessions about supporting neurodiverse staff. So among the leadership and management ones, one of the ones I enjoyed was Serious Leaders Play. We are always in library work, trying to work on things like better communication, overcoming burnout, increasing trust among staff. And this session was all about taking a more lighthearted approach to using games and things like that to help build resilience on teams, and to encourage adaptability and help increase trust and better connections at work. So I thought that was a very very interesting approach to not always taking the hard line when things are getting tough, but sometimes taking it from another angle and saying, hey, let's de-stress a little bit by growing closer in our connections through play. Another leadership and management course that I thought was super interesting, they approached the process of creating leadership norms very similar to how we might do things like our strategic plan. So they put a lot of effort into understanding what they wanted from their leaders, and they created cohorts, formal training, written guides, and assigned mentors so that they could make sure that leadership across all of their locations and through their staff was very cohesive and that it was very clear to understand. So these are 6 examples of the leadership norms that this organization presenting had adopted for themselves, but I was really inspired by just their planning process in creating those leadership norms. Wrangling reservations, of course, at Unbound, we have digital devices that people can check out. And one of the things that has been a challenge for us is that sometimes if you want a camera and you put it on hold in the same way that you do a book, it doesn't come available at the time that you're expecting it to or wanting it to. And that can be a bit of a challenge. So this session talked about a software program that some of the libraries in St. Louis and Chicago have used to help make reservations of items become available when you want them to be available. So it's more like you reserve them for a specific time rather than getting on a list and it just comes up when it comes up, whether that's the right time for you or not. So the name of that program that they use is My Turn. I haven't looked to see if there are other companies that do the same thing, but this one is really interesting. It's a cloud-based program. It integrates well with cataloging and the metadata and all of that on the back end. It also includes parameters that libraries can set for themselves about how long you want the checkouts to be, what the buffers are between checkouts where you can reset things and make sure everything is working and ready to go and prepared, and that you can perform maintenance. So I thought that was a very interesting thing that I definitely want to look into more closely. I also attended sessions about supporting neurodiversity. I thought it was really interesting. A lot of the things focused on something called universal design. So up in the corner, you can see a picture there of a curb cut, which a curb cut, was originally designed to help people with wheelchairs or who have difficulty stepping up over curbs. But as we all know, curb cuts make it more easy and accessible for everyone, whether you're using strollers or pushing a shopping cart. And so something like universal design, a curb cut that's designed to accommodate somebody with a challenge, actually becomes useful for everyone. So supporting the neurodiversity talked about a lot of things like that we can implement in our organization that are intended to accommodate people with neurodiverse needs, but actually end up supporting everybody. Things like not having surprises in your organization, utilizing backwards planning, pairing with mentors, having personalized learning plans, having written agendas ahead of time with clear expectations, following up with things in writing. These are all things that are very supportive when you're neurodiverse, but also really supportive to everyone. And then, of course, I also attended things involving reentry services. At Unbound, we've been doing our Tech for Reentry program, and we do a lot to help people who are reentering from incarceration. And so I really enjoyed some sessions relating to what other libraries are doing to support reentry, just to see what other opportunities there might be for us to support our community. So one of the libraries did things like weekly walk-in or remote meetings with an attorney for warrant resolution assistance. So one of the challenges they found is sometimes that people are issued a warrant for their arrest, but they don't even know it because maybe they have moved or something like that. And so once they find out that warrant exists, it can become a significant legal challenge for them. But the library, through volunteer assistance through partners, legal partners, was able to get a lot of these warrants revoked so that people didn't end up in jail in the first place. They found that it saved $1.29 million in bond money in 2025. 70% of the people that they assisted did not end up returning to jail. And in St. Louis, 4.1 million warrants were recalled. So I thought that was really interesting to see another opportunity that libraries have already started to take on in some areas and might be something that we could consider in the future.
So as an adult services librarian, I wanted to focus more on learning about generative artificial intelligence to take the mystery out of it for the older adults that I serve in our community. So there was a variety of sessions where I learned how librarians across the country approach Gen AI, with their patrons through programs, back-end processes, and even professional development training. So from prompt to productivity, build AI agents to boost program engagement, offered insight into how beneficial it can be to work with AI agents for the workflow. Understanding how AI works and that it's not a search engine helps to use it intentionally and avoid common frustrations. So what AI actually does, pattern recognition. So AI learns from billions of text examples to recognize what good writing, structure, and responses look like and mirrors them back. It uses large language models to predict what words come next, making them powerful for drafting, summarizing, and reformatting context. Given a clear prompt, AI can generate program descriptions, social posts, supply lists, grant language, and so much more in just seconds. When structured properly, AI doesn't answer just one question. It can become a repeatable tool embedded in the workflow. AI provides the structure and makes the claim, but we provide the truth by verifying it with evidence, real statistics, local data, all that stuff. Next slide, please. So here's an example of a reusable prompt. So you define the role, specify the task, you've got your inputs, your outputs, your constraints, and even the tone. And repeatable systems with reusable prompts can be used for programs, readers advisory, survey design agents, community outreach agents, and of course, grant writing agents. But prompting is like a reference interview. The more specific the question, the better the answer you will get. And the best part is the librarian never disappears from this process. AI handles the drafting load, the librarian handles the community knowledge, the professional judgment, and the final approval. So next slide, please. So now we combine generative AI with older adults. There's a big gap in AI literacy with older adults. AI is being introduced into everything from autocorrect, Alexa, enhancing daily lives, social media. It's even in the doctor's offices as ambient scribes. So Pew Research Center did a study, and 50% or more of older adults did not even realize the progression of technology is happening. So many don't even question what they're reading. They just accept it as truth. So libraries are trusted learning spaces with access to technology and the internet. We're very familiar with supporting older adults while they navigate the digital landscape. Our experience has shown us that technology is best taught and received through guided experimentation, not just instructing. Tech is changing every day, and new tools are added constantly. There are a variety of AI models, as we know, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, and putting in the same exact prompts can produce totally different results. So the goal of normalizing experimentation with AI literacy is to show older adults that tools that are available to them and to demonstrate to them how to use them. So through a series of learned lessons, this one specific session I went to, the AI book club was developed. Participants would read a book ahead of time. They would meet and work on prompts together, so each person would have their own computer. Excuse me. And then they would evaluate the answers and encourage continuation of prompting and asking questions and gaining more information. And then they would discuss the results. And through that process, they learned that AI outputs are often affirmative and sound confident, but errors can be subtle, not obvious. So the real challenge is recognizing what is missing. So by walking the seniors through this process, it's helping them reduce fears and intimidation, and they gained confidence in asking questions on the AI-generated content. So this process can be used for any subject, whatever the group is interested in. So lots of options. Oh, and inspiring nuggets, that's me. Okay, so I loved there were lots of little things that happened throughout. So I wanted to make this to share one of the fun ones. We are good at being joy role models for patrons who walk in the door or when we go into outreach, but who inspires your joy at work. So you can create an agreement with somebody who might help you in your library goals to support you in that joy and bringing light into sometimes dark places. And we also need to be that joy to other people. Older adults, apparently there's a shift across the country and beyond from using the term seniors to older adults. I don't know. I don't know where we're at on that. VR training for tough moments in public libraries. So some professors at the University of Albany in New York, with the help of a couple of their students, created a training opportunity where virtual reality headset engaged with Gen AI powered avatar can offer realistic, immersive scenarios that teach and reinforce de-escalation skills in library settings. As library staff, we want to serve everyone equally well, saying the right thing, free of confrontation. This program gives staff the opportunity to take these trainings over and over again at regular intervals to build confidence in handling a variety of situations they may encounter. So Dr. Dumas and Dr. Williams are in the process of trying to get this training readily available to all libraries free of cost. And then I took these pictures from inside the convention center, riding a bicycle and kayaking. So inspiring.
All right, so I focus on leadership and communication and relation sessions because that I feel like was the most applicable to my current job role. And one of the focuses was tailored connections that between people. So you need to have you can't have a one size fits all approach to relationships and connections with staff. You need to have like a individual tailored connection. And then lots of the sessions I went to focus on that. On the right-hand side, you can see my brief synopsis of the trip was rushed meals because the skywalk was very hard to navigate sometimes. So if you ever go there, I would not recommend taking it. Street view is very nice. You can go to the next slide. So some of the memorable takeaways I had, it's not just media reports for leadership. It can be up, down, left, right. So anyone can have influence and be a leader within the context of their tasks. That's something that we really strive for in Meridian, and we're trying to approach that and encourage everyone to approach their job like that. So I think that was very valuable to be reinforced with. The organizational change was pretty important, that it can be started from any position, but to have a lasting effect, it needs to come from the top, or at least be supported from the top. And then it'll be able to trickle down and affect all the different teams and branches underneath them. And then to lead effectively, it takes a lot of effort. You might need to shift your methods to best connect with someone. Like I was saying before, the tailored connections is really important. You need to cultivate a culture that fits the needs of the position, but also invites mental and social investment to raise the bar across the team. So again, just reinforces the connection part and making sure people feel valued and seen. And with all the committees and project teams we're a part of every day, it's a pretty important part of the job that I always feel like we can bolster and polish up. And then maintain consistent expectations and clear guidelines as a baseline, and shift small scope methods to provide equitable leadership to all. Again, this is really important to me just because communication and expectations are one of the top things we're trying to pursue at the library this year, especially. And it was very nice to see both large libraries, small libraries, any size, have similar experiences and be able to chime in and support each other. So we're hoping to be able to use that information to help guide us in the future.
And that is the end of our presentation. We thank you again for inviting us. We invite any questions at this time.
Thank you all so much. Any questions or comments from the trustees?
I'll provide a little bit of commentary. I really appreciate that you guys, that there was some focus on AI sessions. I know in my work, it's definitely become much more involved. It's now become 30-50% of my day, right? In interacting with an AI in some way, shape, or form, right? And I think that's a shift. And I do find that to people who don't do this much of that stuff, it does seem like I'm in this weird Greek valley of, people not understanding what I'm talking about. So, appreciate that direction. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question in general because I thank you for going and taking your time to go to the conference and connect with other organizations and people. That's really helpful. When you are thinking about ideas to bring back to the Meridian Library District, what criteria do you use, or do we have specific criteria? For example, you talked about the warrant program with some pro bono legal advice. What's the process for determining that those programs would be a good fit for the Meridian Library District, as is or with tweaks to fit our needs?
Sure. So thank you for that question. So certainly a lot of the sessions that we attend tend to be related to the work that we're already involved in. So for example, with the reentry services, I'm already closely involved with reentry services. So of course I'm interested in seeing, what other libraries, what challenges they're facing, what wins they have, and what maybe new ideas are coming into fore. But, when we think about how to bring this home, I work very closely with, our assistant director of branches, and we're always having these conversations with our program teams and our leadership teams to say, hey, here's some ideas. Let's talk about feasibility. Let's explore potential partnerships. And we do that very intentionally. We look around and not just say, well, this library did it, so we should, but also look closely at our community. What are our community needs? What are our community stakeholders? What are some opportunities that are maybe unique to us? So not just trying to boilerplate do exactly what everyone else does, but really take a close look at what is unique to our community and what services can we provide that will have the most meaning and impact for our neighborhoods, our local neighborhoods.
Thank you. I can tell from the enthusiasm and the very well prepared presentation that you guys came back with a lot of new ideas. And so I think it was a good use of time and resources to send you. So thank you for attending.
Thank you very much for making it possible for us to attend.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 6, director updates, and I'll turn it over to Nick.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. We are going to start with Cherry Lane. Surprise, I updated one of the pictures for you. So this is a very rough mock-up of the south side of the building, which used to be the main entrance. You can see the columns there blocked off. I'll show you a picture of what that looks like. But this is also where there were parking spots right outside of those windows. And so this is going to be a green space. The assisted creation of the new door shows us where we will now be able to access that space how we had not intended to, but now are able to. And so just wanted to start with that before we get into the actual pictures. So this is what it's looking like right now. The one on the left is the new main entrance. And if you can see the entrance that used to be the main entrance, but is now just the south wall of the building, there's lattice work. I tried to lighten up the picture a little bit so you can see those black lines that are going across the columns. That is where the living wall will go. So we'll have the green plants. We do not know exactly which plants yet. They're still determining what that's going to be, but they have the lattice work up there. And then we're going to have a sign for our logo that pops out and is lit as well. And so it'll try to be inviting from the street, but also indicate that this is no longer the main entrance. And then that big rock that was outside of the main entrance has been moved to the northeast corner. And so that's the furthest north part of Leisure Lane on our property. So when you enter the parking lot through the new entrance, you will immediately see that sign. So we wanted to make sure that it was still in use, but give it more prominence of where it's located versus an entrance exit that is no longer supporting the majority of our foot traffic. Inside, you can see some of the build out there, and then the parking lot is probably something you'll see if you drive by right now. It's all torn up. It's going to take a little while. They will have the parking lot redone in August, roughly. And then another picture of the inside. This is looking towards the, trying to reorient myself on this one a little bit. Oh, this is the circ desk. There we go. And get a better look at it. So in the middle, that column that's like behind all the stuff is where the circ desk is going to be. So this is, if you walk in the main entrance and looked to your left just a little bit, this is what you'd be looking at for the new building. And then I have two Gantt charts here. One is looking at a February open date, and then the next one's looking at a March update opening date. These are still very tentative. This is not by any means indicative of what will happen. If you've been involved with construction, you know that we're planning on this, but we're not banking on this until we get a little bit closer to being able to have actual control over some of the pieces. So going through the exterior contingency days, the punch list, the final inspections, we're looking at having a project turnover from CM in December. So December 11th is where we're looking at having that project turnover. As you know, we have lost staff through attrition and promotion, and so we need to restaff the trailing. So we will begin that hiring process roughly December 1st-ish, like right after Thanksgiving. We'll begin that process of rehiring. And then the automatic handler, so the sorting machine, will be installed in January. I roughly put the dates in. I think it's the 5th is when they'll get started. Should take about a week, but we'll see how that kind of goes. And then we need to move the 50,000 books and all the supplies and everything into the building to make it ready. We can rush and probably do a February 1st opening. However, one of the things that we wouldn't be able to do with that is have the foundation fundraising event where we had been planning to do it, which is February 25th, which would allow us to do a March 1st opening. It gives us more time to get set up. It also allows us to save a lot of money from a personnel standpoint. Just a month difference of if we don't hire the new staff, in December, but we do it in January or later, it becomes a big deal for us. This gives us breathing room from a finance standpoint. And I think that's something we'll definitely have to take into consideration as both staff and the board of how we want to go about this. But just kind of putting this out here so that you have a visualization of where we're at and kind of where we're going. Like I said, the parking lot will be done in mid-August. So kind of jump to past all of that stuff, but this is kind of where they're at with the project timeline. And then I will hand it over to the seal, and you can jump in all that stuff.
Sure. Thank you, Nick. Madam Chair, trustees, I'll make my presentation brief here. Just wanted to touch on some activities we did both internally and externally in June. So we did a lot of skill building for our staff. We sent multiple staff to the ALA conference in Chicago. So that just took place. You could see our director, Nick, there on the back. You could actually see Jenny there too. So several people in this building attended. So we'd like to do a presentation just like Barbara, Jane, and Trevor did in coming months. So the staff could share their experience at the ALA conference. That is the biggest conference, library conference, annual one, excuse me. We also did district-wide CPR and AED certification for all of our staff. So that was great. That was 3 weeks worth, I believe, of 3 days, 3 weeks, about 10 attendees. Yes, so right around 90 people. And And then we had staff help with employee engagement initiatives, including handbook focus groups and HR listening tours. This is something we do every year. We want to hear from our staff. Our HR department wants to hear from them directly and also get their input on our employee handbook. And for summer reading and other activities, we've had just a very vibrant, exciting summer here in Meridian. We've had hundreds of attendees and a lot of great outdoor programs and those within the buildings too. So we had dino dig terrariums at Pinnacle. That was a real joint effort between multiple branches to make that happen. I think Unbound 3D printed dinosaur bones to put in the terrariums, and then they had little succulents and whatnot. So that was a lot of fun. Summer STEAM Lab is going strong. There's a big craving for that. So a lot of attendees. Jurassic Jog was kind of our first fun run, and we had over 100 people and staff dressed as in inflatable dino suits. So that was a lot of fun for the community. We've had a storytelling night, kids cook. That's the photo in the upper right. So a lot of fun, activities going on for summer, as well as outdoor story times. We've had, nearly 150 participants across multiple sessions. So summer's in full swing. It's going great, and going to keep it going.
Now the fun stuff. So we don't have any action items on the budget, but we wanted to give you some overview of what's upcoming with the budget in the coming weeks, month, as we get closer to the annual budget approval in mid-August. So we'll go over the 2026, our current fiscal year amended budget, which of course ends September 30th. And I'm probably going to hand off a little bit of this because Emma made the slide. So I will let her take it, and I'll chime in when I am needed, I guess.
Madam Chair. Director Grove, thank you. So looking at the amended budget, just want to give you guys some high level information today, where we're looking, where we think we're sitting, and then the status of the budget preparation. So for FY26, we're looking at a net increase in expenditures of $26,000. That is mostly being driven by the warehouse facility that we've rented this year. And then we're seeing an increase in revenue of around $192,000. When all the dust settles, obviously we'll have actuals, but these are our projections as of today. The increase in revenue is coming from a little bit more sales tax revenue than we had projected. And then we have some miscellaneous revenue from an insurance claim where we had the vehicle versus building incident. And then just a little bit more on the interest. Interest continues to perform well in our investment accounts. So that leaves us a net budget surplus of $166,000 estimated, of course, but that will roll over to capital repair and replacement. On the proposed budget. So that's kind of the nice little package on the amended budget. Moving on to the proposed budget. We are going to bring you a budget with a maximum levy increase. Again, within the constraints that the legislature has placed on the district. In that budget, we will have large personnel expenditure relative to the general fund budget, as we always do. We will maintain the cost of living for our staff to the best of our ability, and we will maintain our rich benefits package. Coming down into operations, we'll see streamlined purchasing. Mostly that warehouse has given us the ability to budget on an admin level, get a little bit tidier with government procurement and what some of those contracts should look like. So we'll see replacement cycles coming in and some hard metrics that we can use to project out for longer periods. And then on our capital, of course, finishing Cherry Lane and whatever else exciting things may come our way. But that's what we're looking at for a proposed budget. Go ahead. One thing that Director Grove wanted me to hit on with you all is the impact of increasing our dollar value levy does not increase the levy rate to our constituents. And that is because we have so much growth and we have restrictions on the amount of dollar levy that we can increase, that they kind of work together to drive down our levy rate. So on the screen here in front of you, this is a snapshot from the Ada County Assessor's data dashboard. And so this shows our levy rate over the last 12 years. So you can see that from 2014 over to 2017, it came down, a little jump in 2018, and then you can see we've been coming down. And that is because our taxable base just continues to increase, and then our budget slowly ticks up within the restraints of the legislature. So
I would add real quick, some of the change, especially like the 22, 23, I believe that is when the legislature did some changes of how property tax, where the burden is, residential versus commercial. So not all of the changes that are done on this chart are of our doing. This happens at the state level as well.
that is accurate. And you'll see a new assessor come in and they'll assess residential or commercial at different values, and that can bump things around a little bit. So our statutory maximum levy rate, absent any legislative ceilings, would be 0.0006. For FY26, our levy rate was 0.0003. So half nearly of the statutory levy rate.
There's an extra zero in the statutory minimum maximum. Just so that we're clear. I'm pretty sure.
I think we're missing a
Or
zero
missing a zero on the bottom.
on FY27. Yeah.
There,
Sorry.
that's
Okay. So our statutory maximum 0.0006, FY26 0.0003, 458, FY27 estimated. There's a lot of gears moving here. We won't know our final levy rate for a while. 0.0003488. So you can see the tiniest tick up at the end, but again, estimated. So staying stable on this graph of keeping our levy rate for our constituents coming down and stabilizing. As we finish these budgets, bring you a finalized budget for publication, anything you would like to see at our next meeting, at our, special meeting prior to publication, we're happy to provide. I think we counted today 1,200 buckets that we have for the budget. And so obviously we can't bring 1,200 buckets to you guys to go through, but any area that you would like further detail, we are happy to delve down into those specifics.
Madam Chair. Emma, one thing I would like is like in real dollars, what that means from this year to next year in terms of the levy rate. That would be helpful for people who don't do math in their head.
Madam Chair, Trustee Knutson, we can absolutely do that. We will use the best data available to us using the median taxable property value from the Ada County Assessor's website, and we'll bring the real dollar impact.
Madam Chair, what usually works for me is a kind of cash flow concept, right? Here's where my ins are, here's where my outs are, right? That's usually how I perceive the object most of the time for a projection. So that's what usually works for me, right? So.
Thank you. Nick, does that wrap up director updates?
That is it for director updates.
Perfect. Any other comment from trustees? Questions?
Madam Chair.
Trustee Castle.
Thank you. This is for the director. Question on kind of talk to us what happens with the warehouse facility as we draw down this large chunk of our inventory into the Cherry Lane object. My rudimentary mind would say something like, well, doesn't that make a large warehouse object no longer as necessary, right? But I know that we've had some conversations about essentially how that would go, but I'd like some reminder and some concepts there.
Yeah, Trustee Castle, we will lower the amount initially that is in the warehouse to be able to restock Cherry Lane. However, we will not empty the warehouse to restock Cherry Lane. And as we weed materials from the other branches to make room for new materials, we won't have to get rid of those materials. We'll be able to put them in the warehouse, assuming that they still have circulating value. And we'll be able to grow that collection over time. And it allows us to take duplicates off the shelves when they're no longer needed to have 10 copies of all the light we can see out on the shelf. We might still need 10 copies of it because they're still being used, just not in a browsing collection. And so it'll allow us to maximize the circulation of an item for a longer period of time. It also allows us to maintain shelf relevancy to items that are on our branch shelves by pulling the holds from the warehouse, and that will continue to be the case. And because we don't have a 5-story main building like they were talking about in Minneapolis, we don't have that main facility. We have to be creative with how we can really maximize what we do have. And so this allows us to have one really large collection spread across our branches, but also collected at the end of the day in the warehouse collection. And so, yes, it will draw down, but it will be brought back up. And, if anybody wants to donate money to the foundation, they're raising money for opening day collection. And the more we raise to be able to build that collection new, the less we draw down on the collection in the warehouse.
Thank you, Director. That's apt and is fitting with what I've remembered from prior conversations.
Further discussion? Okay, thank you, Director Grove. We will move on to item number 7, library collection displays. We've asked Director Grove to describe the district's approach to observance or special month or day displays within the library.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to have our material services manager jump in as she has prepared a presentation on this, and we'll be able to share with you.
Hi, thanks for inviting me, Nick. I can't tell if I'm talking. Okay, good. Yeah, my name is Jenny Liebig. I've spoken to you before about various materials things. Today we're going to talk about displays. Displays in the library have been the work of folks in the branches, and we recently made a change that was going to be work mostly done in the material services department, where it's following our trend of centralizing some of the work and allowing the folks in the branches to focus as much of their time as possible on things like customer service, which is what we want them to be doing almost all the time. So let me tell you about what's going on with displays, both what we've been doing, the things that have recently changed, and where we're headed for what we're still exploring. And that's what I just said. So I'm ahead of myself. Okay, so what we've been doing is creating library displays of materials in the branches. That's kind of what we're talking about today. There's some overlap with some digital displays too. If you're ever on our website, you might sometimes see those carousels of book covers. Those are selected by collection development librarians as well. But when I talk to people about displays, I say my goal is to connect books to readers and to connect readers to books. Both directions. So sometimes the book needs to find the person who's going to read it, and sometimes the reader's coming and looking for a book. The tools that I want the display team to be using boil down to these kind of 6 categories right here. Library policies, which I'll talk about a little bit, but obviously you all are familiar with our library policies. Our guiding principles, which we've been talking about a lot this year as well. The concept of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. Circulation data. I've come before with a bunch of spreadsheets and stats. I don't have as many today, but I can't have a presentation without talking about that. And then the last 2 would be marketing and merchandising as strategies and tools that we're going to use to create the displays in the library. So next, library policies. The 2 in particular that I wanted to highlight are the collection development policy, the displays and exhibits policy. You perused those already. Those are just reminders from the introduction to both of those policies about what the purpose of those policies are. For example, displays and exhibits, it says that we are
enhancing MLD's educational, cultural, and civic mission. Staff create displays and exhibits to highlight MLD's collection and inform the public on a range of topics. So that's what you all have helped us develop as our goal for those library displays. And then the collection development policy doesn't speak directly to displays, but it does talk about our collection. And so advertising and promoting our collection comes down to articulating the role of Meridian Library District's collection in the community, providing direction to staff members in their role as selectors. So those are the folks on my team who are doing the display work. The policy supports the guiding principles and strategic plan adopted by the Board of Trustees while adhering to the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights and Freedom to Read statement. I didn't want to be here all night in front of you, but I recommend revisiting the Library Bill of Rights and Freedom to Read statement if you haven't visited lately. That's one of the ways that we develop our collection. Again, we don't have to spend much time here, but the guiding principles are related to our displays. Building awareness, in particular, building awareness of our services and programs is a goal for us. And displays are a method of sharing awareness. Similar community connections. The other one I would highlight, of course, is enhancing our collections and creating welcoming environments. So we want the collections in our library to be a positive visual in our spaces. Thank you. Okay, I was like, we went a little too fast. Okay, so for the concept of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, perhaps you're familiar already, but I'll repeat for tonight's talk that this concept that especially is involved in children's librarianship of how we use books for children. So this quote here is from The Importance of Diversity in Library Programs and Material Collections for Children. This is a white paper that was adopted by the Association for Library Services to Children, so ALSC, which you might hear our staff talking about. We've got some, at least one person, I think, attending that conference later this year. So this white paper has been around for more than 10 years. You can see that date on the bottom, April 5, 2014. And the quote that I wanted to highlight from this paper is, children's literature can serve as a mirror reflecting a child's own life and culture, or as a window allowing children to peer into the lives of others. And as this concept was developed, it was not developed for this paper, but it is adopted as ALSC best practices in this paper. We've also developed the idea of the sliding glass door. So for me, a mirror book might be a book about somebody who grew up in Michigan in the 80s and 90s. A window book might be about somebody from Idaho. When I moved to Idaho the first time, I did read books about people who grew up in the West, about LDS culture, which is not familiar to me from where I was. Those would be a window book. And a sliding glass door book takes that concept just a little bit further to allow more, to really invite the reader to step into someone else's life and experiences and try on kind of an empathy viewpoint of those, somewhat other culture to their own. So I put a giant quote in here, but it's because that bottom quote I wanted to highlight. Sorry, Dan, I didn't leave room for the picture there. But I wanted to highlight this last sentence. It is imperative that diversity be included in library programs and displays routinely throughout the year. So it is a direction from us to all of the people who are developing displays that every display that we put up includes some amount of variety of cultures and experiences. And when I say culture, I don't necessarily just mean like different flags of the world, all those like World Cup visitors. I might mean different socioeconomic statuses. I might mean different neighborhoods. I might mean different family types. My culture might be different from yours just because you live with your grandparents and I don't. But to spend some time on all of this text, it says librarians often rely on culturally generic books for storytime programs and exile cultural exploitations to holidays and specialized heritage months. Black History Month, Chinese New Year, Native American Heritage Month, Hanukkah, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, Day of the Dead, and so on. If a child is only introduced to books about her culture one time a year, then she internalizes that the librarian thinks she or her culture is not important. What if this 1 month venture into cultures includes materials that stereotype, demean, or provide misinformation? What is the culturally diverse child internalizing, and what are her classmates learning about her culture? Even the highest quality materials and culturally authentic activities are irrelevant if children learn that their particular culture or the culture of their peers is not good enough to study or talk about throughout the year. while middle-class white children and heterosexual nuclear families have the opportunity to see their culture represented in library collections, programs, and displays on a daily basis, other children are lucky to get their special month or their special day. So I wanted to highlight this in particular because right now it is not a strategic priority for us to do a display based on a month, a day, a week celebrating a culture. This is because we're following that wisdom that we need to be trying to do this all the time. We need to make it a regular part of our library community that all different families and people and readers are welcome here to see themselves in the mirror and to look through a window. I highlighted that paper that was specifically for children and was over 10 years old, just to give you another example of this wisdom that we're seeing. This is a article from a journal that got published earlier this year, and it's directed at adults. And so the quote here to highlight is, including a wide variety of books in our book displays as part of everyday practice will help to encourage patrons and staff to see books by diverse authors as part of the collection and part of the books that we recommend. So again, we're making this the everyday way for our staff and our displays to recommend things to our community versus squeezing that recognition into a box of a calendar day or year. Go ahead. So I promised a little bit of circulation data. This is a chart you've seen before, not that you memorized it or I did. But so we've talked to you before about library IQ. I have library IQ at my fingertips now for my department to look into what is the relative use of different collections, different titles, different sub-collections for different audiences. And I can say that far column that says relative use, a high number means it's being checked out so much. A number 1 means it's being checked out about as much as it's represented, and a low number means that maybe it's not getting promoted. So for example, you wouldn't be surprised to see that youth nonfiction is a little bit lower than some of those other categories. I can take these data and I can say, here's a collection that's not getting used a lot. Is it because people don't know we have it? Is it because it's not in a findable place? If we highlight it on a display, does that increase circulation or not? And how does that affect collection development for the rest of the life cycle of the collection, the buying process? I also have, go ahead, talking about marketing, just grabbed a quick photo. If you remember the train that was here a couple months ago at the meeting, our goal for our programs or our displays is also that since those are visible tools in the library, that we're using them to not just say, hey, maybe you want to read this book. Hey, maybe you want to read this book about trains. P.S. Did you know that we're going to have trains? So tying in programs, tying in services that people don't know we have, tying in community events outside of just the library in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce, the city, other partners of ours, that we're raising awareness for multiple things at once, part of those guiding principles that I mentioned earlier. And then our last one, merchandising. I just love to see all the covers of board books. They're very fun on purpose. You want kids to grab them, right? But so for merchandising, I want to talk about the question, is it milk, which Nick and I talk about a lot, both for library collections and for displays. This is it milk question is what the grocery store does, right? They put the milk in the back because you are definitely coming into the grocery store to get the milk. And if you walk past a bunch of other things, maybe you'll buy those things too. The things they put on end caps are the things that you didn't know they had, the things that they want you to impulse buy. So when we're looking at our library displays, we want to be really intentional about, we don't need to put milk on display. There is no library in the world that needs to put a Halloween book on display in October. For one thing, they're probably not in the building. They're probably already checked out, but people know about them. This, the paper that I quoted earlier talks about you don't need to promote Fourth Wing, you don't need to promote Kristen Hanna, you don't need to promote the things that people are already hearing about in bestseller lists. So we want to look closely at our collection and find the things that need to be on the end cap and keep the milk where it belongs, back in the back, so that people can come get it when they want to. So with all of that in mind, those 6 things that I want people to look at for displays, this was part of our decision. And I say me, this is something that the admin team talked about, moving the decision for book displays to be performed mostly by library assistants in the branches versus collection librarians on my team. We want the people thinking about all 6 of those things who we've hired at the experience level and at the compensation level and at the professional level that we expect that kind of work from. This is not to say anything disparaging about other folks who have done displays, but if we're asking people to put those kinds of data digging, cross-departmental, collaborative work into it, that's not something we typically ask our library assistants to do, and they frankly do not have time to do it. So what we recently changed is, go ahead for the next one, who creates the library displays. Before, they were largely created by library assistants who would get the displays approved by branch supervisors and direction from branch managers as well. This included deciding what the topic might be, creating artwork for it, creating book lists for it, and things like that. And like I said, we've had some great displays that were done by those folks. But what we heard a lot from branch supervisors is, I can't provide enough time for my staff to do this at the level we need them, that it should be done, or at the amount of time that they're wanting to take. And the library assistants do not have as part of their job description the instruction to think about all those 6 things that I was talking about before. So now we've changed the collection development librarians, mainly being the folks who are making those decisions about displays. They'll be carried out, of course, with assistance from people in the branches who will pull books, restock displays, be able to interact with the public about them. But the collection development librarians are promoting their collections every day. So then their support group, this is a collaborative team that does it, their support group includes the print marketing subcommittee, who's going to help us polish all of those print materials that we have either handed out to people or on display in branches. Material services staff, so there's other folks on my team who may be helping pull book lists. When you're taking a book from the warehouse to put on display in the branch, I need to change some stuff in the catalog record for it. And so we've got staff who will help with that on the material services team as well. And then programming staff, like I said, we want those programmers. In fact, it was Barbara who reached out to my team and said, hey, where are the books about trains? Can you help me with the books about trains? So we want that collaboration of, I've got this thing that is a great cross promotion or a great collaboration point. And then just to reinforce here, before versus after, library assistants, that parentheses 2 is their level 2 on that salary structure that you've seen many times before. We've had you approve it. And their job description includes the phrase, responsible for appropriate and appealing display of new materials and resources. This brief sentence ended up being a lot of work, but was not intended to be such. It's intended to be, we're keeping things tidy. We're keeping easels refilled. We're keeping the library looking good. And that is what library assistants have direction to do from their job description. The collection development librarians, on the other hand, those are level 7 on our job salary schedule. And their job description says that they promote the collection internally and externally in collaboration with public service staff. And that may include utilizing local media, vendor marketing tools, displays, book lists, online utilities, social media, and readers advisory. So a higher burden of education, experience, coordination, project management that we do not ask those other staff to do. So that's the main change that we have made. We've also made some changes we're still working on to what is the frequency that we should change out the display. There's some folks who are here all the time and they would probably love one every 3 days to be new. And then there's some folks who, they visit infrequently enough that a monthly or a quarterly change of a certain display, depending on what kind of merchandising strategy I might have for it, might be appropriate. So then on my last section that I wanted to talk about tonight was what we're still finding out about displays. So this is a sneak peek a little bit we've been doing the collection community survey this past spring, and that included some focus groups. So on the chart there that you can see, it's very tiny, but one of the questions that we asked folks was, how do you usually discover, or your family member, how do they discover the next item or book to check out? That sky blue bar partway down says books on display in a library branch. And that comes out to being about 33% of people chose that. That doesn't mean that that's everybody's favorite way. You could choose as many as you wanted. So about a third of the people who responded to our survey said, yes, I use displays to help find books. But But that's just very, very broad overview. When we did the focus groups this past last 6 weeks, we were able to drill in and ask some folks, tell me about how you interact with displays. And we're answering those questions now. So that's why I say what we're still finding out. We've done some of the work. We're continuing to look at it. The questions being, what does display mean? The folks in the focus groups, when they talked about displays, a lot of the times what they meant was just those books on easels that are sprinkled throughout the shelves. They didn't necessarily mean a separate shelf that was dedicated to a display. And they talked very, very enthusiastically about, we want to see the cover of the book. I love being able to see the cover of the book. Flip out those book covers. We talked about who uses displays, and in particular, folks who are library users themselves and bring their children as library users. Talked about, I don't use the displays. I come knowing which books I want, but my kids will see a book on display and they will grab it. And anecdotally, staff have noted that too. The children's displays need a lot more restocking than the adult displays typically do. In the focus groups, we talked about in what ways do displays make books a little bit less accessible. We had a complaint that when something is on display, but they want to find it, they don't know where to find it. That's another one of the changes that we've made, is that we have in the past kept our backstock for what's going to be on display behind a desk or in a staff area so that we could refill those displays really easily. And that's a hardship if that book is now not available for somebody to check out. We also talked about a lot of folks had some hesitancy about taking a book off display. What if I'm not allowed to? What if they're using that to advertise and I shouldn't take it? So that's communication piece with patrons as well. If we're continuing to use displays as a tool, letting them know that when these books are for checking out, you can take them. Please do. We got more. And then again, what we're still finding out, what do we have that people don't know about? That's that digging into that library IQ data that I talked about. What are the things that we've purchased, or even things in this collection development survey that people said, I wish you had X, Y, and Z. And me and my librarians read the answers and we went, we have all of this already. They just didn't know, or they couldn't find it. So is that a search problem, or is that a advertising problem? And how can displays help us solve that? Okay, I talked really fast because I always do, but do you have any questions about what I brought today?
Madam Chair, Jenny, first of all, thank you for your presentation. It sounds to me like displays curated by MLD staff in your department are driven by metrics, ties to programming, and ties to our mission values, and as opposed to driven by a calendar. And that I really appreciated the empathy viewpoints, the ideas to help people understand, not indoctrinate. I want to really point out that, especially because children do navigate toward displays, children are really expected to be supervised by their parents. So it's really important that our patrons remember that. And I don't feel like we have a huge issue with that. Or we have really supportive patrons who want to come in and experience the library with their children. So that's really, really great. My question is, how far in advance are displays planned? And are there certain displays that are planned based on metrics, certain displays planned based on programming? Like, I would imagine that there's a couple different calendars for those displays based on what's happening at each branch.
I hope there will be. Thank you for your question. Yeah, so this is in changing the way that who's doing the work, we're also kind of changing how it's done. Traditionally, we have had folks planning quite far ahead, months in advance, so that we knew who was responsible for the different spaces in the library and they were getting their topics approved. Right now, since we've just changed the folks who are doing it, we have our plans for August, and we have tentative plans for September. In August, our displays are going to be largely focused on sports. We want to ride that enthusiasm from the World Cup, those people who are seeking those things out. And we've got tons of folks starting their kids starting their team sports this fall and getting into those kinds of things. So that one, we're not super far ahead right now. That's not my goal, to be frank. We have we're currently in the middle of a recruitment for an additional collection development librarian, and we'll be able to complete those assignments when we're onboarding that person of who's working in what displays and how far in advance those things are expected, because especially working with programs, once we know what the programs are, then we can trigger what we might want to do for our displays as well. So I would hope that we're planning at least a quarter ahead. In my dreams, we're planning 6 months to a year ahead, but I don't want to promise that, certainly.
Jenny, a question?
Yeah.
When you talk about centralizing display design within material services, does that mean it's standardized sort of displays for all branches, or are they separate?
Sure. The
With
first
each
month
branch in mind.
that we did it with this team was this month is July, and we were celebrating America 250, and we wanted this is a big, affects everybody kind of display topic. I'm not expecting that to be true moving forward. So the beauty of our branches is that they are in individual neighborhoods. They have different program strengths, and we don't need to necessarily have the same display at Pinnacle that we have at Unbound, et cetera. So what we're centralizing is the way that the selectors are helping build the book lists for what goes on display. They will be doing things like searching out those window books and those different experiences, using the tools at their disposal. And we're centralizing the kind of strategy. So this helps with consistency as well. If it's as you continue to grow, and different departments geographically separate or organizationally separate might end up working on things that aren't completely in alignment because of that siloed nature of it. So we are trying to use coming from one department to be strategically on the same page, even if the actual display and books in the branch are not the same in every branch.
Madam Chair,
Trustee
just
Cox.
quick question for you, Jenny. At your current capacity, right, for your team, do you guys have the resources to add this to your workload?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just making sure that, I want to understand the environment a bit in that respective.
Well, it is a change. But the things that the actions that the staff who are doing displays need to be taking should be things that they're doing already. They need to be familiar with the collection. They need to be familiar with which things aren't circulating as much. They need to be familiar if a train program's coming up so that if we don't have train books, we can buy them. So all of those things, adding the display is an added assignment, but it is not one that is adding a slab of meat into a fruit salad. You know what I mean?
Understood. Thank you.
Madam Chair. Jenny, thank you for that excellent presentation. In the future, if any concerned citizens in our community ever approach me with questions, I will reference July 15th meeting as an excellent tool to understand what goes into the displays. Fantastic high-level look at the good work you and your team are doing. It's much appreciated, and keep it up.
That's a good segue into my next question/comment. Library displays have been sort of a hot topic in the past with folks who are opposed to certain messaging or highlighting diversity in a way that they don't agree with. And I've heard some concern from the community that with a sort of standardization of these library displays that there's a risk of Meridian Library District self-censoring when we spent a lot of time and energy fighting censorship. And I understand when you say diversity is top of mind, right? When designing displays, regardless of whether they have anything to do with a diverse topic, right? It should cover all kinds of things. But I think a large part of diversity for me is highlighting those underrepresented voices. And so if what we're saying is that we're just going to make sure there is some diversity sprinkled in this display, then we're not highlighting those voices, and maybe that's a missed opportunity. And I think if we want displays to be reflective of our community and to feel welcoming and to sort of reflect back patrons' lifestyles or their interests or parts of their culture, then I think part of that can get lost if we just say we have a blanket diversity policy, right? And we're not highlighting these underrepresented voices.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you for that question. I agree with you that that criticism is out there. I would push back a little bit against the idea that we're not highlighting. I think that we are. I think by taking time and resources to seek the titles to put into our book lists on our displays to make sure that we are creating diverse displays all the time, I think that is a highlight. We're not taking the easy way out of grabbing the most popular books on the top a certain topic, because in our country and in our community, the most popular books might fall into a narrower area of representation. I will vouch very strongly for everybody on my team who's involved in selecting books that diversity is important for them in creating the collection in addition to promoting it. I don't know how much we want to get into a discussion about, do we highlight the months or not? One of the things that I talk about when I talk to staff who have candidly, they've just said the same thing to me. This is we all have examples of a display from the past that was one of those calendar displays that somebody came and said, it is important to me that you have this. I love that you have this. Thank you so much for showing me, showing my family in this display. And those positive things are positive, but they don't necessarily mean that that's the strategic direction to go, I don't think. We already have limited real estate in the library. We have limited calendar days in the year. And my concern is whenever you are highlighting one thing, the things that you aren't highlighting are there in the background looming. And we have heard many times this display is about this other thing, and my mirror display isn't there. I don't want to provide opportunity for that criticism, and I would rather we be trying in our efforts every day to have our staff trained to do RA that includes recommending diverse titles, and that it's part of everything rather than that otherization that I tried to highlight in the quote from that white paper, is that it's a celebration often when it's a year or a week a month or a week, but it is also pushing it into a box of this is the time for you. The rest of it is the time for us regular people. And that's a really dangerous thing to try to reinforce. I agree that it's kind of nuanced, and maybe not every person in the community or staff member or library in the country would treat this quite the same way. We're not alone in the way that we're trying to treat it, and we do have some of those professional resources to back up the idea that making diversity the norm is a really valuable strategy.
Madam Chair, I would add one of the pieces of this is how do we celebrate what makes us diverse, what makes us unique in an inclusive way? How do we highlight seeing myself in this display, no matter who you are, and seeing others that are different from me, but also in this? So take a topic like engineering. Do you have a diverse way of displaying our collection that shows old people, young people, people from different cultures, people of different orientations? Different religions, how do we show that in this one display? So what is a uniting piece that shows a diverse range rather than othering our differences? How do we make our differences something to be celebrated in a united way? So how do we look at this from a different angle? How do we approach this in a way that brings us together to celebrate what makes us the same and what makes us different at the same time, and not solely focusing in making everything two-dimensional? How do we make our collection and our community three-dimensional in our approach? So,
Madam Chair, it sounds to me like, first off, I want to applaud you for coming and presenting this approach, right? I really enjoyed the concept of, are we offering milk? And my thoughts are, you're basically saying we're going to put sauerkraut to the forefront, right? And there's going to be some people who have some opinions about sauerkraut, right? Both positive and negative. I guess my point of view is that you are discussing how we are threading an important and desired needle, and that needle requires a level of expertise that may not be necessarily inherent in the library assistant position. So from my perspective, I am supportive of what you're describing on the change here. I don't envy you your role, but I can see that you are passionate about this subject, right? And, I fully support the initiative.
So I also fully support the change. I think it makes a whole lot of sense from a data perspective. It makes a whole lot of sense from a work perspective. What has me concerned, though, is the rhetoric around not highlighting specifically underrepresented identities. Because we can't deny that we're in a very specific cultural moment. And if we ask for the month of June, for example, which is Pride Month, if we ask by highlighting this group that has been historically extremely marginalized, extremely underrepresented, and to go further, just subjected to a whole lot of hate and discrimination, what other things in June might we be missing? I don't think that's the right question. And I think asking that question really erases sort of the idea of promoting diversity. And I also think, having been there for many of the discussions that Meridian Library patrons had during our meetings and during our time with the county commissioners, from my perspective, it runs a little foul of the feeling of the community, right? Because essentially, even if we're not considering it self-censorship, what I've heard here today are a lot of the talking points that people use to justify discrimination and to justify not highlighting diverse voices. And it's a slippery slope. And you can say, well, this month's about baseball. It turns out there are only, this specific culture are all of our most popular books, or based on the data, the books we really want to get out there are all by, whatever identity. And I think the focus on diversity can be erased. And I also think that it can make it difficult for patrons to see themselves reflected in the library. And that there's highlighting groups, especially those who have been traditionally marginalized and discriminated against and under political attack, specifically in the state of Idaho and around the country right now, today. That to me sends more of a message of a true respect for diversity than just saying we'll sprinkle some into a display that's not specifically highlighting diversity, right? I don't know if I'm making sense at this point, but I think it's something that Meridian Library patrons would be concerned about, especially those who took their time and effort and felt very, very passionately about anti-censorship during our recent struggles. So that's my concern.
Madam Chair, I understand your concern. I personally would like to see underrepresented communities included in regular displays relating them to how they fit in and are not different from our community as a whole. And I think when we relegate, for example, Black History Month to, I think it's February, No, am I out totally off?
It is.
Okay.
February.
That's not fair, because I think it's helpful for some people, but for the most of the time, we we have people in our community who would like to be represented throughout the entire year. So I think of it, this is a very simplistic representation, but when I was in the classroom, I hated a poetry month. Like, we're going to do a poetry unit and study just poetry, because in reality, poetry relates to all different genres. So if we could look at it through that lens and include it through the lens of different genres and different topics and themes, students were more likely to see connections between a poem and an essay and a novel and a short story. And it just made for better critical thinking. Again, that's a very simplistic analogy, but I like the idea that, I don't know how to say this without saying it weirdly or poorly, but I like the idea. I'd rather get complaints about content and displays throughout the year than just in June.
Madam Chair, just one I wanted to mention. I agree that a calendar-based approach to displays driven by tradition or calendar, or we've always done it that way, it's a very simplistic and basic model. I think the Meridian Library District is approaching this with a very high-level approach that is justifiable and quantifiable and is data-driven. And for that, I appreciate Jenny's efforts and think they are doing certainly on the right path towards serving our community at a very high level. And one other way to look at it is, well, hey, if your community is 20% Black, does that mean 20% of the books in our library should be of a focus on Black culture? That's a pretty unrealistic and basic approach to solving problems and to creating opportunities for community engagement and growth in a positive direction. So by throwing the calendar and federal holidays out the window, I think that's a good thing to expose our community to diversity throughout the year.
I do want to be cautious that we're not reducing the point I'm trying to make to, we should only have Black authors on display during Black History Month, right? That's clearly, nobody is saying that. But I think if we're not willing to acknowledge that Black History Month exists and bring that to the community in a way that's responsible and respectful, obviously, then we are self-censoring. Because we know that those are the things that library adversaries have been fired up about in the past. And I can't, and I think a lot of Meridian citizens would agree with me, is that I can't see that as a coincidence. That we went through this period of strife with these groups that had an anti-diversity message, and then now we're sort of specifically not highlighting diversity on its own. If diversity exists within a display, that's one thing, right? But if we are not highlighting diversity on its own, it's like, for me, it's the same thing as saying, well, why don't we have a straight Pride Month? Because every month is Straight Pride Month, right? Because they're not a marginalized group. They're not a group who's had to fight for their humanity. Same thing with Black History Month. Well, why don't we have White History Month? And that is what I'm worried about the rhetoric sounding like coming from the library. Because again, that is a message that I think folks who are in favor of censorship use really heavily because it sounds so reasonable. And it really does. Unless you dig into sort of the history of the tools that have been used to oppress these groups. And then it becomes problematic.
Madam Chair, trustees, if I can, I appreciate very much that you articulated all of that, which I think you are absolutely correct that your concerns and comments are representing a large amount of people in our community who would agree with you. What I can do right now that I would like to continue to highlight is that in the times surrounding the antagonistic things that have happened to us at the library, what we've done in the collection development department has not been to take a step back from embracing searching for those titles and finding those titles. If anything, we're working hard to make sure that our collection is diverse. I know that this is not the same as having the month display. I don't think it is. I don't want to come up here and pretend that I'm against having a Pride Month display. I've created them in the past myself. But I do think that the strategy that I outlined is supported by our guiding principles, by our collection development policy, and by a really strong, diverse collection. And that the highest priorities for our collection displays are being met by those things. And that, in fact, we have been accused of overrepresenting that 20% comment, that maybe some people think that we overrepresent some people by percentages in our collections. And that's because we do try really hard to find those items. I won't speak too much more because, I don't represent the entire library, and it's a discussion about what we're trying to do. But thank you for making those comments. And I do want to reassure you as much as I can that it is a priority for my team, both in selection and in display creation, that we can find ways to represent anybody in our community and anybody who might not be in our community yet.
And I fully believe that that's the case. And I have so much faith in your professionalism and your ability. I just think it's important to bring that community concern to the forefront and just, I think I love the way you've gone about making that change and the thought that was put into it. And so I think time will tell. And I hope that library patrons don't notice or feel like they're not being reflected with this change. But for awareness, and just so that we are bringing those community concerns to the forefront, I wanted to make sure that we talk about this and have a discussion. And we know that it's an issue that folks are discussing in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I just want to add that even though Jenny's the one presenting today, everything her and her department have been with the support, collaboration, and directive of Nick and I.
And with the branch managers. This is something that we've been talking with the branch managers about for years. This is really not a large departure of what we've been talking about for years. We've had some staff that don't get it and don't want to get it and have purposely gone against directives and then got mad when they've been told they can't do what they want to do because it's not approved. It's changed after it's been approved. We've had staff that don't want to understand and then are mad when they get told that they've done things wrong. And so this is taking this out of that being an option so that we can focus on serving the public. Our time and energy doesn't need to be spent doing trivial internal, like back and forth. Our job is to serve the public with purpose and integrity and with the goal of being the best public library possible by being out there with customer service, doing our behind the scenes piece with data and efficiency and thoughtfulness to who's in our community, how do we serve them, both minority and majority, how do we make sure that we're doing this with purpose. And I think we've had some people who don't understand it that have been on staff, and we're trying to make sure that as we go forward, that people that are on staff understand what we're doing. Also, that we keep you all appraised of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that we go forward together.
Nick, I really hope you left out the word former there, as in former staff was insubordinate, not on board, pushing their own agendas. Because all it takes is one bad apple to spoil the bunch, and I think I would hope that those staff members are no longer on board.
Yes.
I think at least we can speak as a board that we agree with the direction of at least saying, hey, the display object should live under the curation department, right? And I think that that is a thing that we can definitively say as the board. Do the other trustees agree?
Oh, yeah. On my part, absolutely. And within the realm of our responsibility, this discussion doesn't exist except where, because we do trust you as the professionals,
Right.
but we do have a responsibility also to bring up community concerns. And if folks who brought specifically concerns to me are watching this, or they want sort of a breakdown of what happened and what that conversation looked like, they now have that. And I think that between the things that everybody said, I think it's pretty clear and pretty compelling, the reasons for the change and also the commitment to maintaining diversity within the displays. Okay, any other comment?
Anyone watching that disagrees with anything I have said is welcome to vote against me next election.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item number 8, signing authority for Cherry Lane renovation memorandum. Nick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will maybe pass over to Emma to give us the finer points of this, but this is something that you had done last March, I think, is when we had signed something similar to this, but bringing this forward so that we can move through the process of FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, the purchasing of that for Cherry Lane. So I'll hand it over to Emma with any detailed pieces.
Madam Chair, thank you, Director Grove. Our financial policy states that the board will approve expenditures over $75,000. The purpose of that is to ensure that the board remains in compliance and the library remains in compliance with Idaho purchasing statute for political subdivisions. As we proceed forward with the Cherry Lane project, we need to enter into several contracts for furniture, fixtures, and equipment procured within the best practice and under those statutes based on the threshold. But we need the ability for Director Grove to go ahead and approve those contracts real time and not come back to you with special meetings every time we need a contract approved. And so it is also under the scope of the board to approve contracts. And so we're requesting temporary delegation of signing authority.
Madam Chair.
Trustee Cummings.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the signing authority for Cherry Lane renovation memorandum as presented and published.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And item number 9 is executive session. We will go into executive session with a roll call vote. Trustee Cummings?
Yes.
Trustee Castle?
Yes.
Real quick, let's make sure that we read why we're going
Oh,
into
yeah.
executive session so that we're in full compliance.
Okay, pursuant to Idaho Code 74206-1, we have 2 separate issues we're discussing. Subsection B is to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, or public school student. And the second topic for discussion is subsection C, to acquire an interest in real property not owned by a public agency. Okay, we'll go ahead and repeat that roll call vote. Trustee Cummings.
Yes.
Trustee Castle.
Aye.
Trustee Knudsen.
Yes.
And I-
Kohler.
Trustee Kohler.
Yes.
And I vote yes. We are in executive session. It is 10:21 p.m. and we are back in regular session. The next agenda item is future agenda items. If board members want to add something to the next agenda, speak now. Or forever hold your peace. You can contact Nick with anything you need added to the agenda between now and then. And item 11 is adjournment. So it is 10:21 and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.